Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, with the World Championships rapidly approaching, I thought it would be a fun time to look at the biggest surprises that we've ever had at the Pokemon Trading Card Game World Championships. Because it doesn't make the list, I'm sorry. But even if we go back to like last year, what won the World Championships last year? Iron Thorns. And look, I'm not saying that was a bad deck. It clearly wasn't a bad deck. It won the World Championships. I absolutely am saying that that was a massive surprise. Going into the World Championships last year, we all knew that Iron Thorns was a fun deck. We all knew that it was a good deck, and on the right day, it could have a great tournament run. But the fact that, it had a met attack, and while it's in the active, Pokemon the rule box have no abilities other than future Pokemon. Well, against some decks, that's amazing. Against other decks, that's kind of rubbish. And you play a bunch of other disruption cards, don't get me wrong. But this was not thought of as one of the real big contenders last year. It was thought of as a decent deck, not actually good enough to win the thing. And yet, it went ahead and did so. Another deck that really took everybody by surprise winning the World Championships was back in 2009, when the Pokemon World Championships was won by Beedrill. Beedrill. That's right. Well, Luxdrill, as it was actually called on the World's deck. We all know what it means. It was Beedrill. And basically, this was a deck that had two different kinds of Beedrill. One let you go and search out your other grass Pokemon. And one did 30 damage for each of your Beedrill in play. So the goal was you just swarmed out Beedrill and went nuts. Now, you had broken time space at the time, which is really important. That allowed you to basically evolve up whenever you wanted. That was very important. And then we also played it with Luxray, which was a card which wasn't really seen in Beedrill that much. And really here, the surprise was partly, Beedrill's good enough to win Worlds? And partly, wait, you play Luxray in Beedrill? But actually, Luxray was there as a lovely gusting option, and it kind of worked beautifully. It was not the deck that everybody had in their minds coming in. And then the biggest surprise, which I'm not including on this list, was when my namesake Ross Cawthon got second at Worlds in 2011 with the deck that they called The Truth. And there were like 50 million different cards in this deck. And it had Donphan, my boy Donphan, which was just kind of like your big beat stick. And it had Vileplume to lock your opponent out of trainers. And the real weird thing here was Ross actually played Tropical Beach in his list. And back then, people were amazed. People didn't realize you were allowed to put the Worlds promo into your deck. This was the first year we'd ever had a good Worlds promo. And people just kind of didn't think it could be included in your Worlds deck, but it could. And Ross was busting it out against people who just had no idea what it actually did. It's very easy and quite possibly correct to say at this point, had Worlds been untimed, Ross probably wins the World Championships. I think that could well end up being right, but it's kind of irrelevant, honestly. It wasn't untimed. We were timed, and that meant that we ran out of time, and it couldn't be done. Ross didn't win Worlds. He came second. But he won second with this absolutely bizarre deck that nobody saw coming. Oh, I should mention Blissey Prime as well, which was a really good card, because Blissey just, healed off all of your Pokemon. Oh, and then if we're mentioning Blissey, we should probably mention Reuniclus. Reuniclus let you move all your damage around your field so that it could then be healed with Blissey while you're blocking item cards with Vileplume. It was a weird old deck, but it was absolutely beautiful. But if they didn't make the list, what did? Well, in at number 3, I'm putting Queendom. Queendom was a deck that won the World Championships in 2025. The second World Championships ever. And yes, I do think it is absolutely relevant that that was the second World Championships ever. Because you know what? It was a very different time back then. If you go back to 2005, it wasn't like it is now with YouTube videos everywhere and articles. This was back at the time where people would actually hide. They would hide their Worlds decks. People didn't want to give away all of their secrets, and they basically just went, well, no one else, like, I'm going to keep this to me and my friend group. No one else is ever going to know, and then I'm going to go and win Worlds. And to be fair, that is what happened in 2005. Because it's not just the fact that Queendom won Worlds. The fact that this unknown Queendom deck won Worlds, it really was an unknown deck. That was weird. The truly weird thing was there were 3 players who played Queendom at Worlds in 2005. Well, Jeremy Moron won the World Championships. Pablo Meza got top 4 at the World Championships. Anyone want to guess who knocked him out? Yeah, Pablo got 3rd at Worlds after being knocked out by Jeremy Moron. And then Adam Capriola, who you may know as the person who made 6 prizes and PKMN cards. PKMN cards, the best website, incidentally, for looking up Pokemon card stuff. It's phenomenal. And to be fair, Adam also had a pretty good run, but we had Jeremy coming as the champion, beating Ross Cawthon in the finals, for what it's worth. That was Ross's first second place finish. And we saw Pablo coming 3rd, but after being knocked out by Jeremy in the semi-finals. This was a deck that came out of nowhere, a completely unexpected deck, which took 2 of the top 3 spots. And I think it's fair to say, and feel free to argue with me in the comments, I think if they're on different sides of the brackets, we got a mirror match in the final. Now, the way the deck basically worked was we had Pidgeot's Quick Search, which basically got, any card you like. And you're attacking with Nidoqueen, which did 40 damage plus 10 more for each evolved Pokemon you had in play. Which doesn't sound that great nowadays, but I assure you back then that was good. And also, don't sleep on Toxic, that put 2 damage counters instead of 1 on the defending Pokemon between turns, while poisoning. That was frankly pretty gosh darn good. It was a deck that people weren't ready for, and it took 2 of the top 3 spots at Worlds, and no one had a bad run with it, because there were only 3 players that were actually playing it. Now, in at number 2, the second biggest surprise we ever had was actually at the first World Championships. Magma Spirit. Sugiyoshi Yamato came along and won Worlds with this Team Magma deck. What was most surprising about this, however, was that the seniors division was won by Takuya Yaneda, yes, that Yaneda, playing the Magma Groudon deck, and juniors was won by Hayato Sato, playing the Magma deck. What happened at Worlds 2004? And again, you need to remember that back in 2004, we were a lot more insular. The information sharing online was not what it is here more than 20 years later. The Japanese players had this Magma deck. We did not take this deck seriously in the West. We didn't think it was that big a deal. So the amount of testing done with and against it was minimal. And the thing is, if you actually take a look, this is one of those obvious decks. Like, you got Team Magma's Groudon, which is your kind of main attacker here. And the Pokebody says that you must have 4 or more Team Magma's Pokemon in order to attack. We got 2 energy, 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, and then free energy, 70 damage if the defending Pokemon already has 2 damage counters on it. Again, these numbers look low, but at the time, this was fine. And then you just played it with a bunch of other Magma cards. Team Magma Zangoose, which firstly let you search for Team Magma Pokemon, and secondly let you do 10 damage for each Pokemon in play with Team Magma in its name. And then you had Team Magma's Claydol, which had a Poké Power that let you move an energy attached to your Pokemon with Team Magma in its name to another one, which paired really nicely with Team Magma's Camerupt that let you search your discard pile for a basic energy card and attach it to Team Magma's Camerupt and then put 2 damage counters on it. And then Claydol moves it where you actually want it to be, and then you got a whole bunch of support Magma cards, and it worked beautifully. In the West, it was an obvious archetype. Everywhere it was an obvious archetype. Oh yeah, just play a bunch of Magma stuff, sorted. You know, you had Magma Energy that was 2 fighting or Darkness Energy. Clearly that's good. It only lasts for a turn, but that's still fine. The difference is, in the West, no one took it seriously. In Japan, they realized the power, and they came and won all 3 age divisions. So what's more surprising than that? 2016, Mega Audino. Now look, I am biased. I will admit that. I will happily admit that. Because this was, and I mean this was a deck that launched my channel. My channel started growing after Worlds 2016 when I made a video about this deck and uploaded it the second the World Championships concluded. So people searching around for information about this deck inevitably stumbled upon my channel. It was lovely. Went very well for me. That is not why this is the most surprising. When I went to Creatures before Worlds 2023 in Japan, I had an opportunity to ask the playtesting team a single question. The question I asked them was, what is the most surprising deck you ever saw do well? You know what their answer was? Mega Audino at Worlds 2016. And I think they nailed the assignment on that one. This was a deck. You know, one way to put this is, and we're in the age of information sharing, and we were in 2016. So this isn't a case where we look at it and we go, well, you know what? You know, things were... No, it was not that easy to surprise people in 2016. Everybody knew what was going on. I was commentating European regionals in 2016. I was getting Mega Audino from prize packs, or packs, that I was being given as a reward for commentating in 2016. Official live streams were a thing. So was information sharing. Everyone knew what to expect going into Worlds 2016, and yet Shintaro Ito still won with Mega Audino. There was only ever one finish, bearing in mind the amount of information we have nowadays, there was only ever one finish of note for Mega Audino ever. Before Worlds, at Worlds, after Worlds, there was only ever one other notable finish. Shin Akiyama, who came 22nd at Worlds with the same list. It was terrible before Worlds, it was terrible after Worlds, and Shintaro Ito went and won the World Championships with it. And basically, it was just Mega Audino. But the thing is, Mega Audino had an attack, free energy, 110, plus 50 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It was very meh. And then there were a bunch of cards that let you set this up a little bit faster. I've done videos about this on the channel. Go look them up if you want more information about the ins and outs of the deck. But the reason it was so good was back then, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, everybody played multiple Shaymin, which happened to have exactly 110 HP. Oh, so this did the perfect amount of damage to KO Shaymin. Not only that, but back then, you know what, like a lot of the top decks were? Things like Night March with 30 HP Joltik. So you're taking 2 prizes because you're constantly hitting Joltik on the bench. You know what he had to beat in the final? Greninja. A setup deck. At Worlds 2016, Mega Audino stumbled into a format where essentially the only good decks were set-up evolution decks that could be preyed on by Audino and low HP basic decks like Night March that could be preyed on by Audino. Before Worlds, the format wasn't quite the same and it didn't work. After Worlds, the format wasn't quite the same and it didn't work. But for one magical weekend, this was perfect. And it won the World Championships. And it was kind of amazing. So there we go. As far as I am concerned, and as always, happy to be corrected in the comment section or at least argued with, I think these are the most surprising wins we ever had at the World Championships. Magma taking all 3 age divisions from Japan with a deck that we in the West had basically decided wasn't good enough. A group of friends taking a Nidoqueen deck, which no one else had really properly considered, and then getting 2 of the top 3 spots at Worlds with another good finish. And then a deck which was absolutely terrible before and after Worlds, that everyone knew about and considered a joke, in the age of information sharing, going and taking the win. That's what I think. I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Get us! Be nice. And please do make sure you leave a like and a comment down below. With the new YouTube algorithm, it helps out so much more than it did in the past, and I would very much appreciate it. And of course, we need to finish, as we always do, with a shout out to one of our lovely Patreons. So shout out to the lovely Nick Gleason, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and seems to be a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.